Casey, today we're answering one of the biggest questions that every podcaster has.
Okay. Let's see. Is it where do I get neon lights for my background?
That is actually a very good question and one that I would like to have answered. No, we're actually figuring out today is how do you actually make money from your podcast? We're going to walk the viewers through every monetization path, big and small, and give clear guidance on which ones are worth your time, which ones to avoid, and how to build revenue without burning out your audience. Casey, can you think of a few monetization paths that are worth avoiding?
More than a few, but yeah.
More than a few.
Yeah.
Well, I think we need to jump into it then.
Yeah, let's go.
Welcome to Podcast Support, the show where we tackle the questions every podcaster needs answered to grow a successful show. Whether you're just starting out or scaling an existing audience, we break down the roadblocks, share practical strategies, and give you step-by-step answers so you can spend less time guessing and more time building the podcast that you want. Thank you for contacting Podcast Support.
So first up, let's go with listener support through Patreon or Substack or, services like this. So a few of these options that we have are one-time listener donations, early access to episodes, ad-free versions of episodes, members-only Q&A episodes, members-only community access like Discord, Circle, or Slack, and making your podcast subscriber-only through Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So let's start off with the first one, Michael, one-time listener donations. Now, this is one that unless there's a really specific reason to go with it, I don't think is a particularly great idea.
And the reason not one to rely on.
Yeah. And the reason is literally because you can't rely on it. It's a one-time thing. And so, if there's some type of, I don't even want to say if there's like an emergency or something, because like that's literally, I think, the only time you really use this as a lever to pull, because what you want to be building is sustained revenue. And so this actually really hurts your opportunities to do sustained revenue, because instead people see it as, oh, I gave you money that one time, so is that it?
I've already paid you because I gave you $5 6 years ago. I've already paid for my podcast subscription.
Yeah. And so, I would definitely not recommend this one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's no way to build a business around it. It's, if you put it up there and like, in case you make a few bucks from it, whatever, but it doesn't seem like anything to write home about.
Yeah, you basically just have to, if you're going to do this as one of your tiers on something like Patreon, it has to be that they're getting something very specific from it, which at that point you're basically selling them something. And so you might as well just have a store or, a collection of courses that you sell or something like that provides value to them. That's a little bit more crystal clear than, one-time donations.
Yeah, I definitely prefer anything that's delivering value for money versus just asking for charity, basically.
Yeah. So I know that we said that we were going to, offer advice on how to actually accomplish these, but this one, we're just going to say pass on it and just focus on other things.
Well, we did say we were going to do every monetization type.
Yep, we sure did. So I think we've covered this one enough. Let's move on to early access to episodes.
I think the next few of these kind of all are in the same vein of Patreon, like being creative and finding a way that someone can pay you a monthly subscription and you can deliver just an extra awesome version of your show every single week that they are going to want to pay that extra amount to have.
Yeah, it's a super good point. I think that's true. And so when you're thinking about Patreon, it has to be thinking about community building, because that's what you're giving them the opportunity for. And so early access to episodes is one of those little key levers, but you want to be thinking about, how do I build up? How do I make sure that when people are subscribing to the different tiers, that they're genuinely getting something more out of it? That can be, honestly, I think some of the most powerful ones are some of the simplest, because, there are the people who it's like, oh, you have your tiers, and you have one tier that covers, the membership to the Discord, that gives you access to early episodes, it gives you members only Q&As. And then they have one tier above that that's just the exact same stuff, except for that you're like, that it's the super tier. I know one person, Casey Newton from Hard Fork, he has this for his, which, oh, actually, no, this was not them, not him. This is for If Books Could Kill. Their Patreon, they have a tier that's like their highest tier where it's everything that you could get in the tier directly below it, except for that when you see them, they have to be nice to you, is like the gimmicky joke that they have. And so literally you're paying the same amount, but just because but they make it emotional that you're supporting them. And so that's one of the things that I think you need to think about and keep in mind when you're doing any of these Patreon or Substack or things like that, is how do you personalize it to the audience to make them buy in?
I love how creative people get with these things too. There's so many different ways to, up the parasocial relationship with these, to really make that connection with your audience, and also just to deliver value in really creative ways. Like, I love the example that you have about the horror channel that analyzes horror movies, and they use Patreon to show the uncensored versions of their videos because YouTube makes them censor it. That is such a creative way to use the platform and to encourage people to give you that monthly fee.
Yeah, another one that I love is the Severance podcast, and on there it's all about like theories behind the show Severance, and people pay to be able to help create the episodes. And so it's the one person who's the host of it, and he has this Discord where people can come on and they can throw out their crackpot theories. They can read episodes before they're recorded and provide insights or input into them. They can help with researching, different furniture or stuff that's on the show and where it was the inspiration came from. So that's one of those where literally their job is made easier because they have this community that they've built that actually wants to pay to take part in the creation of this.
I think that the last thing that you need to make sure you're considering when you're developing a Patreon is that your Patreon is additive to the experience of listening to your podcast. You don't want to start, if you already have a podcast and you're now starting a Patreon, you don't want to start paywalling things that you were previously offering for free. You want to offer even more on top of the free podcast. Because if you start putting things behind a paywall, you're going to start alienating the loyal audience that you've already built up.
Yeah, it is something that you see a lot with, especially like people on the creator side, is that when they try to create these lists, they try to manufacture value, and that's what you want to avoid. You want to be offering real value. Let's move on to the next one, Michael, building a business around your podcast. And so some of these things would be using your podcast to drive growth for your business, like consulting, coaching, or training. So, actually having a product or a service that you're selling. The other ones are selling merchandise, selling a course or service related to your podcast, selling PDFs, workflows, templates, things like that, in-person speaking, or even writing a book. And so, the list can kind of go on here, but there are some real best practices here. Do you want to talk a little bit about like sales funnels?
Yeah, a podcast is a really great way to advertise at the top of your funnel, and to bring in listeners who are brand new to your business, brand new to you, and to get that awareness, that top level of your funnel.
Yeah, 100%. And I think, there's pretty much a standard sales funnel or content funnel that 90% of podcasts will lead their audience through. And it starts out with social media at the top of the funnel. The next layer is podcasting. Underneath that is your lead magnet. Underneath that is your newsletter. And then you have your website. And then you have purchasing the product or service. And pretty much every single one wants to be leading people through that funnel. And so it's all about finding out how you can and getting creative with that. And that starts with call to actions that are interesting. It starts with making sure that you have your clear value proposition when you're making the podcast, having all of those ducks in a row. And so then it comes down to, making sure, that your lead magnet is truly interesting and actually has something to do with the podcast, and that when people are signing up for that newsletter, that you're capturing that into, or signing up for the lead magnet that captures into a newsletter that is really interesting to people, that provides regular routine value in their inbox, and that within that, you are also driving people then to your website where they can learn more about you, they can learn more about your products and services, and then hopefully they can actually take the action of buying one of your products or services.
Yeah, and two other ways that podcasts can really help support the growth of a business are a lot of businesses need constant social media content, and it can be a real drain to have to constantly create videos from scratch all the time. And so having a podcast that you can draw clips from and post clips onto your social media, suddenly you can take a lot of pressure off your social media manager. And suddenly your social media manager just has all this content to work with, and they're going to be so happy. And so a podcast can be really, really beneficial for that. And then also something that you've been talking about a lot recently is that you can use your podcast as an interview platform to get conversations with clients or leads or anyone else that you really want to have conversations with that could help you grow your business relationships.
This is one that I love, is the ability to strike up a conversation with anybody. And so this is something that I'm doing with another podcast that we're doing, which is all about innovation and conversations with, business leaders about what they're doing to push forward their own businesses, to innovate on what's happening in the industries and the markets and stuff. And so what I'm doing there, though, is that I've started out with just 4 people that I know. And I reached out to them. I said, hey, sit down podcast, come hang out with me for 30 minutes to an hour. Let's talk. And then at the end of that, I go to them and I say, listen, the only way that I want people to get on this podcast is by word of mouth, is by somebody who's been on the podcast introducing me to somebody who they think has something interesting and valuable to say. And then I asked them, will you just put me in contact with that person? And then that person, and this happened. I'm now, booking other conversations and stuff, super excited about that. But what they do is that, they just go and they say, hey, I was just on this podcast. You should be on it too. And then they put me in contact with them. And that has been so cool in building out and just continuing to grow our network. And so it's something that, we're doing ourselves because I think it's just so valuable. And I think that basically any business at this point should be utilizing this, because if you feel like networking is holding you back, well, it's time to start a podcast, because you can then really go and grow your relationships by just sitting down with somebody, talking with them for 30 minutes, and then at the end, giving them something from that 30 minutes, which is a podcast and maybe some social media clips that you cut down for them.
I'm really excited to listen to this podcast.
Well, Michael, hopefully by the time that this podcast comes out, you can listen to that podcast.
Wow.
So there you go.
Where can people find it? What's it called?
Oh, yeah. Okay. You want me to do that type of stuff? Yeah, it's called The Innovator's Blueprint, and it's available everywhere. So go
everywhere? On Netflix?
Literally everywhere. You on it? No, we bought CNN. It's airing on CNN 24/7.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Who knew? Honestly, it was a deal.
All right, next up, we've got a couple that I think are related. Well, okay, the first one's actually not really related. So selling merchandise kind of goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of like the one-time donation. Selling merchandise is a better version of that, where people can support 100%. Your show, but they're getting something specifically out of it. And like they get to support your show, they get to advertise for you by wearing your shirt with your show's name on it. But also they get a shirt with a cool design and get to feel like they are wearing something that expresses who they are, because they identify with your show and like how your show portrays life.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it is the 2 things that you want to be thinking about when you're making merchandise is 1, what's the budget of your target audience? And 2, what are the types of things that they relate to? Because I remember, we were talking, we were, I can't remember the name of the conference. We were at a conference, and while we were there, Stephanie from,
VidCon.
We were at VidCon. Well, Stephanie from Game Theory was talking about the value of doing polling, and they would do polling on their YouTube channel, across all the different platforms that they had, and they'd gather all this information. And what they found was that their audience much preferred long sleeve like hoodies and sweatshirts to normal t-shirts. And so the second that they switched to selling those types of products, their merchandise sales went up dramatically. And so it's because they took the time to understand who their audience was and then made that type of stuff. Because, for some people, a t-shirt is way less expensive than a hoodie is, but if a hoodie makes you feel better, you're more likely to spend that extra money to get something that you actually like versus, just buying the thing that's the cheapest. And so it's really about figuring out what your audience feels comfortable spending and what things they value versus things that they don't value.
And speaking of what your audience values, that's where selling a course or a service related to your podcast or products like PDFs, workflows, templates, etc., all come into play. Because your audience has a need, has a problem in their lives. You're already selling a solution to them in the form of your podcast. And now you can go a step further and sell like a literal solution. Like having trouble planning your day, and like this podcast episode is about how to plan your day. But if you go to my website, you can buy my template for the PDF of how I plan my days every single day.
Yeah. And, you want to be strategic with this because you need to make sure that there's truly a problem that you're solving. Now, I'll give you an example. This has to be the funniest. I'm not going to name the creator because I just think it's not a successful example. But I think it's informative.
Who are you outing?
There was this rock climber who created an online course for rock climbing, which is such a funny thing because literally rock climbing is about going and physically doing something. So why not just go, if you're going to spend the money on a course, why not just spend that money on an instructor for an hour? You'll get the way more because it's in person. And so you need to make sure that there's actually a need in the market for what you're creating.
That's a really good point.
And so I would just highly recommend starting out by making PDFs, workflows, building up your audience, making sure that these things are exciting to them before you go and make a course or something like that. Test these things, battle test them before you make the full investment into something that you're not positive somebody will actually want.
And also, you can learn a lot by giving these things away for free in the beginning too, because you'll see what people actually are interested in, because people won't download something they don't need, even if it's free. So offer some things for free, see where the real value is, see what gets people excited in your industry, and go from there. And then the next two are in-person speaking and writing a book. And I'll also, with in-person speaking, include like live podcast recordings is another one too.
Okay.
Definitely these are more prestige level things that like come at like a much higher level of, having a large following with your podcast already. Hard to start booking speaking gigs when you're 6 episodes in and getting 12 views per episode.
Yeah. Same with, you can write a book, but you're probably not going to get much sales.
You can try to give it away for free.
Yeah, but then that's not building a business.
Yeah, no.
Which it might be worth it, dude. I think it's super worth it to.
Dude, there's actually an entire industry around companies that just write books for you. So then you have a book and you can give it away for free.
Yep. Yeah,
it's very interesting.
It's super interesting. So yes, I totally agree with these. I would say in-person speaking, booking those guest speaking gigs. The thing with these is that a podcast can help them, but they are totally separate from the podcast. They can be bolstered by it, but if you want to find speaking gigs, like you have to actually enter the speaking gigs economy. Same with writing a book. If you really want that book to sell, you're going to have to do things to boost up that. Now, I think a book is a little bit more tied to podcasting than speaking engagements are, but both of them, you're going to have to put in a lot of extra time just to make those happen. And I'd say with the same is sort of true for if you have just your own, product or service that you're selling, but the podcast can do a little bit more to gain awareness, and at least it's more of a marketing tool versus speaking engagements.
Yeah.
So just a bit of hesitation there, I suppose.
So our next general category are small ways to generate cash flow. And so these include things like putting affiliate links in show notes, very useful for like tech podcasters, YouTube AdSense, the TikTok creator program, and charging guests to appear on your show, which I know that last one, charging guests, is your favorite way to make money on podcasts, isn't it?
No, it's the worst. Don't do it.
But we said we were going to say every way, so I had to include it.
We do have to include it. That it's a surefire way to build distrust with your audience and to ensure that you never talk about anything interesting on your show, because somebody's paying for it to be there. And so they're certainly not paying for you to ask them hard questions or to challenge their assertions. And so I would just say run away from this one. If the closest you can get is to having somebody sponsor a segment of your show, or to sponsor like a topic of that episode. But at that point, you just have to be really clear with your audience that what you're doing is sponsored content, and that they should basically, they should understand it as an advertisement, because that's what it is.
I've never seen anybody successfully pull this off. Even like really large creators and podcasters, like it always just feels forced and bad.
Yeah. And it 90% of the time, it has 1,000% higher chance of being bad for you than it does being good for you.
Yeah.
So you just got to take that risk.
Yeah. These things like YouTube AdSense and TikTok creator program, these are useful. They generate cash for you. It's kind of passive, it's important that the only thing that you can do is put out the best content possible. And then from there, you get views, and those views equal money. So there's not that much to really talk about strategy-wise. You can't make money from these platforms until you've reached a certain size. So it's not like, don't worry about these things until you're at that point. But once you get there, it's awesome that you can have an extra source of revenue.
Yeah, 100%. Because like the thing with YouTube AdSense is the way you could control that is by being in a specific market. So you could choose a specific industry that has higher AdSense per view than other ones, but you don't normally have that much control over it. So I'd say these are ones that you can kind of set them and forget them.
Yeah. And then there's affiliate links, which are really cool. However, when you're small and you're not getting clicks on your affiliate links, they can kind of be a pain because you have to set them up. And if no one clicks on them within like 90 days or something like that, they just stop working.
Yep.
And so you take a bunch of time to create these affiliate links, and then no one clicks on them, and then you keep making new affiliate links, and it just becomes a pain. So
even after a while, if you don't get people to click on them, Amazon will just cancel your account too. So you just got to make sure that those are actually worthwhile to you.
Yeah, so definitely make sure that you're thinking about the time investment with these things. But at a certain point, it's great to be able to make that extra revenue from affiliate links because they're definitely a powerful way to make a couple extra bucks every episode.
So, let's talk about sponsorship, and we're going to kind of break this into two different ones. We're going to talk about teaming up with sponsors, and then we're going to talk about selling ads, because selling ads is its own big, beautiful thing. And so when we're talking about teaming up with sponsors, what we mean are basically three main things, which is naming your studio, branding your show, and branding segments of your show. And so all three of these have a similar thing, which is that a sponsor is purchasing some cachet from you, and they're doing it in more outsized roles than if you're just selling ads. And so these can be very simple in like the naming of your studio, where, maybe you get like a little logo of theirs on the wall or something. And if you really want to be like radio style, you can say that you're coming from the Pepsi Amco podcast studio in Northridge.
Amco studio. Welcome to the Trader Joe's podcast studio.
Yeah. That one, It happens, especially for larger shows. So
Yeah.
it's probably, I mean, they might do it, but it's more so because you're going to say that they did it.
It just
versus
feels. I think it kind of
anything
feels
else.
old fashioned. Is
Yeah.
the main problem.
Yeah, it does. It feels very radio style, and that won't work for most shows. Now, branding your show and branding segments of your show, especially branding segments of your show, I think is something that is having a bit of a renaissance and is becoming more and more popular as far as a way to engage audiences without it feeling like you're taking a prolonged ad break that people click through. And so I think that one is one that I absolutely be thinking about when you want to be providing the most value to sponsors and getting the highest CPM and getting the highest amount of dollars for your show. Segments can be a really good way to boost. All right, well, should we move on to selling ads?
I think we should. But first, we should go to our sponsor, who is
Pepsi Amco. I already told
Pepsi Amco. Yep. Why are you combining these two brands?
They decided to merge. Everyone has.
Brought to you by Liquid Death.
I thought Pepsi was owned. Is it not Amco? Maybe Namco. Namco?
You could be totally right. I don't know.
Who's Pepsi owned by?
I think Pepsi is owned by
Oh,
Pepsi.
it's just PepsiCo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pepsi
Well,
is
never
the one.
mind.
Pepsi is the big company that owns all the little companies, like Doritos.
Well, fair enough. Good for them.
Doesn't Pepsi own Frito-Lay or something?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, that was a tangent that we didn't need to go on, but here we are. So when you're selling ads, you can sell these ads yourself, or you can team up with an agency that can handle ad sales for you. You can also run ads for your own business, pre-roll ads, mid-roll ads, post-roll ads. Those are the most common. And so really what you want to be thinking about here is how you can maximize your revenue for the minimum amount of time ads are on your podcast. Because the amount of time an ad is running on your podcast directly correlates to how many people are dropping off of your podcast. And so you want to be making sure that you are making as much money as possible while not losing people. And the way you do that is by making sure that one, the sponsors are actually applicable to your audience, and two, that you are making these ads interesting. One of those can be doing segments like we talked about earlier. Another way could be building those advertisements into the actual show itself. For like a random example, if you ever watch Jesser, the basketball YouTuber, he will talk about his advertisers while they're playing basketball. And so it like forces people to watch and continue to pay attention while the ad is going. And so it's those types of things where you want to find ways that people can't just click past or skip over, and they actually do take part in listening to the sponsorships.
That's extra important because it's not just about losing the listeners. It's not just about them stopping listening to the show. It's about the fact that if they skip the ad, your ads will be less successful. You're less likely to actually get them to go to the link or buy the product or whatever it is. And suddenly your advertisers aren't seeing a return on their investment within your show. So you really need to make sure these ads are listened to and that people want to actually engage with them. So you want your ads to be successful, not just for you, but also for the person who's paying you to advertise on your show.
Yeah. And then the other thing to think about is that pre, mid, and post-roll ads all cost a different amount. Pre-roll ads normally sell for the most. Mid-roll ads normally sell for the middle. And post-roll ads normally sell for the least. If you want an easy breakdown of these, you can go over to our website, podfluence.com, and go over to the resources where we actually have an ads price generator. You can put in your industry, and you can put in the amount of views that you get per episode, and it'll tell you, how much you might want to sell your ads for pre, mid, and roll. So that I would just recommend go check out that there versus us break all of that down right now. And the reason that people like sponsors like this versus just going through YouTube or any of those is that you can be way more targeted with who your audience is by sponsoring specific shows. So that's one thing to keep in mind, is that you offer a lot of value by being a show talking to a specific audience. And so you want to honor that by making sure that, those sponsors pay the most possible.
So to finish off this episode, Casey, what is your favorite type of monetization?
My favorite is definitely sponsors. And that's, okay. I guess because I don't necessarily think of products or services. I don't think of businesses necessarily in this category of monetization, because I think that the business is the business, and podcasting is your great way of building up that business. And so if with that one being included, which we did include it here, then that's for sure my favorite, is have a business that your podcast can help you scale, because they're really good at that. If we're talking about all of the other types of monetization, then I think sponsorships, because yes, they're a little bit more of a rocky road, but you have way more control over what you charge, and you are able to find sponsors that actually relate to your audience. So you are able to provide value to your audience. But what do you think?
I think that my favorite, honestly, is Patreon and Substack. I just think that there is so much creativity there and so many different ways to just enhance that relationship and bring so much more to the podcast experience for your audience. So I'm going to choose those, mostly just because of the creativity. I just think, when I see a good product offering on Substack or Patreon, I'm just like, damn, I wish I had thought of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, the goal with those is that they're more stable than sponsors are. So
Yeah.
if you can have that, that's awesome. If you build a podcast where you're pretty stable and sponsors are going to like you in lean times and in boom times, then I think that sponsors can be really valuable.
That's all the different ways you can monetize a podcast. Go out there and make some money.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you for contacting podcast support.